The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark.
Glory to you, Lord.
The apostles gathered together with Jesus and reported all they had done and taught. He said to them, "Come away by yourselves to a deserted place and rest a while." People were coming and going in great numbers, and they had no opportunity even to eat. So they went off in the boat by themselves to a deserted place. People saw them leaving, and many came to know about it. They hastened there on foot from all the towns and arrived at the place before them. When he disembarked and saw the vast crowd, his heart was moved with pity for them, for they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. The Gospel of the Lord.
I don't know if you all remember kind of this time period not too long ago where the youth were looking to the past decades and kind of bringing things back. I think we call them hipsters, where they were kind of bringing things from the 20s, the 30s, hairstyles, really impractical things like typewriters, unicycles, all kinds of things. Do you guys remember this? Not too long ago. I've been thinking about that this week, especially as I was reading this gospel, and it reminding me of not this period. Really, it's my generation that kept bringing these things back, and it's very interesting, I think, to think about this kind of movement, because it's very much against, or goes against, kind of the current of the age. The church calls this age that we're in modernism, or really the mentality. And modernism really tends to aim at the future. You know, she talks a lot about progress, but talks about it in the sense that we have to really disconnect from the past. So we're seeing that in today's world and in our own culture, in the sense that we talk about, or we talk to our youth, and how they need to kind of find their own selves. They need to find their own identity and really create it for themselves, right? In many different ways, we're telling them, create your own identity. You kind of rule yourself. You're your own master. How many self-help books do we have? And then a lot of this is really kind of diminishing the importance of the past. So how many statues are we tearing down? How often does a culture look at the past and kind of find one aspect of your past, and rather than see redemption or the hope of forgiveness and change, she says, no, you can't do anything now, right? You're canceled. We have a great difficulty in our modern day with our past, so we're always trying to disconnect. That's kind of the modern iteration of this, and that's why I find this little mini era very interesting, because it goes against that. It's looking to the past to try to find something. We saw that also in the 70s, 80s, 90s. We saw kind of try to disconnect from the past in our own church, especially in our own American church, the Catholic Church here. We thought in the faith we need to really disconnect from the past. The church is needing to change, we would say, because the world is quickly changing, so we have to change along with it. And so we disconnected from the things that were handed on to us. You know, St. Paul talks about the faith as being something that's passed on from our fathers, right? The apostles passed it on and so forth. Things that are handed on. Very beautiful connection to our past. And yet we said, no, we don't need that. We need to change. So we really rejected a lot of our past, and we started to experiment with the practices of the faith, especially with the Mass, but even in our own beliefs. So that's part of the same thing. It ties into this era of really having a struggle with the past. And in kind of where all this began was even a couple hundred years ago, where there was a great need to reform ourselves and our practices and our belief, bring it all back to Christ. So there was a great need for reform, but what happened was there was a Protestant revolution where we, instead of reforming ourselves, bringing ourselves back to Christ and looking to the past, we said, well, we need to erase a lot of our history. and a lot of things that were handed on to us. And so we have kind of this big rupture in the church, big separation, again, because of a struggle with the past. This is why I've been thinking about kind of this little mini period of history recently where the youth is so discontent, so obviously not being filled, not being shown who they are looking to the past. So whether it's looking to the past, which is not necessarily a good thing if that's all we do, or if it's looking to the future, like we've been doing, but forgetting the past, I think all of this points to a deep desire, or let's call it a hunger that we have. Something is obviously not being fulfilled in us, so we're either looking to the future or looking to the past. And when I read this gospel, I think there's a similar hunger in the people. You know, they have been following Christ. And if we remember, there's even a time where there are 5,000 households, which means at the very least 20,000 people following Christ. And they're even following him to a desert. And it's getting late, and they realize we haven't had anything to eat. So this is where the Lord multiplies the bread and the fish so as to feed the thousands. But that's not why they were there. They were not there to be fed. They're not there just to see a miracle. Maybe that's something that they had in mind. They wanted to see what he said and what he could do, but they were longing for something else. And that's why the Lord allowed this to happen. He knew that they were going to be hungry, right? He's God. But he wanted to show us something, that they were hungry for something else. And then we see this in our gospel for today from Mark, where the apostles had been sent out, like we heard last week, by twos, and they're preaching, they're teaching, they're driving out demons, all in the name of Christ, all with his authority. And they come away to Christ, and they come back to him. They report the things they've been doing, and they're hungry. They haven't even had a chance to eat because the people are just such in need of what they're giving. There's a hunger, but it's not just a physical hunger. And it's not being satiated by the culture, by the people around them, by the time. And it's not being filled today by our culture, right? It's Christ who fulfills this hunger. That's why he says to the apostles, come away by yourselves. Come to a deserted place and rest a while. So rest in him is what he's implying. He's the one that can fulfill that hunger. He fulfills it in the apostles. They have to come back to him, be filled up once again, and then be sent out again. You cannot give what you don't have. So they have to come back to Christ. He fulfills this hunger that even the apostles have. And again, why I've been thinking about hipsters, right, so randomly, is because there's something kind of good there, I think, in looking to the past. Again, not that we want to be tied to the past, absolutely not. But the church, our faith, is really anchored in the past. It does not look down with disdain at the past. Instead, it's something that we look at with great love and pass on things from the past, right? Sacred things from the past. Not everything, right? But the good things held by the church, right? Who is the body, the sacred body of Christ. She hands on these things to us. So we look at it with respect. Not something to be changed, but something to be changed by. That we mold ourselves according to what the church hands on to us. So we look at the past as something to conserve. But it's the things that the church holds, not just what we desire, right? We don't pick and choose. We also look to the future. So the church is very much rooted or anchored in the past, but very much always looking to the future. So Christ is always aiming at a certain point in the future for us. Kind of the problem of our era, the biggest thing, I would say, is that we're always thinking about future or progress, but we have no idea where we're going. And that's why the youth are always grasping for something else. They're not content, even though we keep telling them, oh, we need to progress. You need to make yourself who you want to be, right? Even going as to extremes, as God has given you your body, your sex, all these things. And we're even telling them, no, that doesn't matter. You make yourself, right? That's progress. What are we progressing towards? And the church has a great answer, right? She says, towards heaven, towards that reality of being in union with God for eternity, right? And that happiness and peace of his for eternity. That's a fixed point. We know where to go. That's good. That's what the youth want to know. That we know where we're going. The church can take us there. We know where we started. Point A. point B, right? That's very simple. The church thinks very simply. But she's also very much in the present. There's nothing like the sacraments in this world, right? Because the sacraments are very much in the here and the now, especially the Mass, that the most powerful prayer we have, where on this sacred altar, this sacred place, Jesus brings himself in the most extraordinary way. He brings his body, his blood, his soul, and his divinity to the here and to the now. That's why this is a sacred space. That's why we do things like dress up, try to come early, right? Try to pray in silence, because this is a sacred place in which the here and the now becomes very different here than out there, right? We set ourselves apart. In a way, this is what Christ is saying with the apostles. Come away by yourselves. With me, I will give you that rest. That's why Sunday is the day of rest. We rest in the Lord here. He makes himself present. God, the living God, is present here today, right now, in a very unique way. So the church is very much centered on the present, in a way that the world doesn't know how to be present. We don't know how to be present to each other. We complain about that all the time, right? But we don't know what to do about it. It's here. The answer is here in Christ. We center our lives around him, around the sacraments, around the truths of the faith, which are, again, very much here, because they don't change like the world. It's anchored in the here and the now, the truths of our faith, of what to do, of how to do things, of how we can mold our thoughts, all because we're aiming at the future, which is heaven, and all while we look to the past with great respect, with great reverence. So let us aim at Christ. Let us anchor ourselves in the church, and know that we can be rooted in something as firm a foundation as Jesus Christ. Our help is in the name of the Lord, who made heaven and earth.